All right. Welcome, everybody, to this art night Zoom watercolor class with my friend, Sarah Copperberg. Sarah worked for me when I was the circulation supervisor in Wyndham, and we became really good friends. And she is just a really good artist and a great teacher and an overall fantastic human being. Not that I'm biased. Okay, a little, but she teaches an online and in-person art class for Wyndham too. So I'll throw up the link for that because she does that on a monthly basis. Started, it was my idea. And so it was, hugely successful, and they're a lot of fun. And Sarah's not at all sick of me sending her ideas.
Oh, no.
Even now.
Yes.
And so this is going to be a really great and fun evening, and you're all muted, which is great. If you have a question and you want to put it in the chat, or you want to unmute yourself, that's terrific. It'll just help cut down on background noise, but do keep your cameras on if you want to. Sarah's going to angle her camera down, and if you want to do that, or if you want to angle it down at some point to show her what you're working on, or however you want to do it. But I'm going to turn this over to Sarah and let her take it away. I'm very excited.
Hi. So nice to see everybody tonight. I did just want to, two things. One is I didn't mention that you would need a pencil tonight. So I hope everybody has a pencil, but if you don't, please, please, you could just run off and grab a pencil. That would be perfect. I always forget to add pencil to my supplies list. The second thing I wanted to say is that I have a dog that can't leave my side, but occasionally will want to scratch the door and go out. So at some point I might have to just get up and let him out the door. But I'll introduce you.
He's not just any dog. His name is Augie. And he's a
Chiweenie. He's a Chiweenie.
And he's right?
Part Chihuahua, part Dachshund, and I'm his person. So he likes to just be at my feet while I'm.
Hi, Augie doggy.
He's a good boy.
I met Augie the day they brought him home. So
yes, we brought him home from Massachusetts. He was a little rescue pup. So I'll just give you a little background about me and art. I went to Bridgewater State University and I studied fine arts and photography. And I really enjoyed the fine arts aspect because I got to take a class in every type of medium. So when it comes to teaching, I feel like I can teach most things.
I should also say Sarah took my author photo.
I did take her author photo and her Facebook photo and her Instagram photo. And they look beautiful because Jen looks beautiful.
No, they look beautiful because Sarah's really good. There was wine involved.
There was wine involved. So I went to Bridgewater State and I didn't start working in art right away, but I always used those skills. And it really wasn't, I've been teaching art for about 15 years. I started with little children and moved up to grown-ups, and actually kids I think are a lot easier to teach art to. They're not as judgmental of their own work as adults can be. So this is a judge-free zone, and from a beginner to an advanced painter would be, just wonderful to see all different types of work. I live in Gorham with my family, and that's where my studio is. It's attached to my house. That was just like the prerequisite for our house, was that it had a place for my studio to be attached to. So we found this nice little house. And right now, Jen said I'm working at the Wyndham Public Library. I'm still there, and I do a monthly art night for adults. It started slightly before the pandemic, but really kind of took off during the pandemic because I felt like adults needed something to kind of help them relax and meditate a little bit. And so now I create these monthly kits that they get to take home with them, or they can join my class and work with me. So I'll just give you guys an overview of the class, if that's okay, and then we can get started. The first thing that we're going to do is a color test. And I know if you have your own watercolors, that's great. If you have the watercolors that I recommended, that's great too. I have my own watercolors. I use Winsor Newton, and they're really used. I actually washed my palette and everything out so that they looked prettier for you guys. But and so what we're going to do first is a color test where we take each and every one of our colors and we recreate the palette on a piece of paper like this, so that we can see what our colors look like on white paper. It's really important, and it helps you play with, you know, the darkness and the lightness. So having a paper towel or a rag with you, I have my painter's rag and some water, and we'll take our time. So anybody can, if you need to get up and grab anything, you can, and I can stop speaking at any time if you need me to just stop for a second so you can run and grab something. So yeah, the color test will be first. And yes, Miriam?
Can the color test be on just an 8.5 by 11 sheet, or should we use that pad that you instructed us to get?
Well, it's tough to like feel like you're wasting watercolor paper, but what I would do is use the watercolor paper. You can make it small and use it for other tests when you're doing more work, because you want to see how it holds on watercolor paper. Is so much heavier and has that textured groove. You want to see how it holds on regular 8 by 10 paper. You actually might rip it and go through the paper because it's thinner. So to your, like, I have the same size, and I did mine really large so I could show you, but you guys could even cut this into quarters and just do small little circles. You just want to see what your color looks like on white paper. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Oh, yes.
I have a dumb question.
No questions are dumb.
Well, this is very obvious and easy to answer for those who know. My watercolor paper has kind of a textured side, and it has a very smooth side. Which side should I be doing my test on?
I do the textured sides, the texture side. But when you play with watercolor after this, play with everything. Try a little bit of everything, because I always think of the artist Helen Frankenthaler. She didn't put a gesso on her canvas, so her paint sunk into the canvas, and no one else did that. But just because she decided to give that a try, it became her, like that's what her art is. It's this beautiful art, this paint, because she just tried not using gesso one time. So try the smooth side, try the rough side, but the rough side tonight will probably be the best thing. That'll be what the rest of us are doing. But I highly recommend experimenting, especially with art. Then we're just going to talk about watercolor basics. And I have some notes on just some, like the main things that I think help me with my painting. And then we'll sketch and paint. And so I will help you with composition and let you know. As you can see, there's a daylily just sitting in one of your boxes right there. And that daylily I picked, and I sketched it out last night. You can paint your own flowers. You can even pull up a picture of a flower online if that's easier for you. I just wanted to have something there for you. And at some point, I'll be able to show you a little bit of how I would draw that flower and the different shapes that we use in the composition. So we're going to get started with our color test. And using your palette, we're going to take some water, and actually I'm going to switch my camera view so you can see me doing this work. All right, so using your palette, can everybody still hear me? Because I'm not facing my computer. Yeah, great. Okay, good. I am just going to take one of my brushes, and I'm going to dip it in my water, and I'm going to wet without touching the paint, each one, just adding a drop of water to each one of my. It gets it a little bit wet ahead of time. Some people like to put a sponge down, a wet sponge on top of theirs. Now, if you have the 36 palette, you can choose not to do every single one of them, although I really like making I like doing a color palette on paper for everything. I do it for my colored pencils. I do it for my markers because everything looks different on white paper than it does just looking at the color. So then when we get started, once you're done with that, you can take either a pen or a pencil and you can draw out your palette. Now, if your palette is the one that you guys got, I know it's circles. You could draw some circles. Or if it's like mine, you can draw the little rectangles. And I like to draw it almost exactly so that I know which one I'm looking at. So I know when I'm looking at this right here, just making sure you can see that this color right here is this color right here, and this color right here is that color. So the more water you add, the lighter your watercolor is going to be, and the less water you add, the darker it's going to be. And that's another really interesting thing to play with right now while we're testing this out, is to see how dark you can get it. And then if you wanted to see how light you can get it. This is just a time just to play around. And feel free, if anybody has a question, just to unmute yourself and ask. I can, if you just unmute yourself. Yes, Miriam.
So do we have to draw circles on our paper, or can we just free form 36?
You can free form it however you want to do it. I was just drawing circles so that you can see how it's done. And in between each one, you want to, really rinse your brush and probably dab it on because I just mixed that green up a little bit. But yes, you don't have to draw the circles, and you don't have to draw just whatever feels good for you, just to give you a handle on what kind of watercolors you're working with. Some pans need more than others. I have this pan right here that was given to me by a friend, and this requires more water to get it going than my trusty one that I use all the time. So you might need to see how much water yours takes. And while you guys are working on that, I'll tell you about a couple of other things that you can use when it comes to watercolor that we're not using here in this class, but that is something that I learned how to use while I was in school. There's basically two types of watercolor. There's tube watercolors and there's pan watercolors. I like using pans because it's really easy to travel. I can just pack this up and take it to the beach with me and bring a small pad of paper with me, and I can paint the ocean. But the tubes are really great too. You have a little bit more ability to create color. It's easier to mix tubes too. I'm a huge fan of mixing my own colors. So it's much easier when your watercolors are liquid. Another amazing thing that I think everybody would want to try, it's called masking fluid. And masking fluid is like a glue that you would paint onto your paper, and then you would watercolor over it. And when everything's dry, you'll peel the masking fluid off and it will be white. And so it's a great way to do, flowers and anything with detail, or anything that you want like veins in. It gives you so much to work with when you do masking fluid. Also, if you were doing a painting, I have a couple of books here, and I'm going to switch my view again while we're doing this. I have a couple of books here that I wanted to recommend as well, and I can show them at the end so that everybody doesn't have to look up from where they're working. But there is one book that talks about masking fluid in a really great way, and it is with this painting of a bird. So the artist wanted to do the background first, so she put masking fluid all around her bird sketch so that none of that bled into her bird. And then she peeled it off and she was able to do the work on her bird, which then ended up looking like that. So masking fluid it's fun, and there's a lot of different things that you can do with it. I have 4 books. I actually, over the last 2 months, checked out every book in Minerva on watercolor and chose 4 that I really liked for 4 different reasons. So hopefully, if you guys are looking for recommendations for books, there are some great ones
Do you
out
want
there.
to just tell me the title, Sarah, and I'll put the link, the links in the
Yeah,
chat.
thank you.
Yes, do you want me to send them to you now?
Or
would you like?
do you want to just say them out loud, or is that?
Yeah. So Everyday Watercolor Flowers is this one.
Everyday watercolor flowers.
I'll put them in the chat, guys.
And then Watercolor is for Everyone. For those of you who love abstract art, this is Creative Watercolor and Mixed Media. And then the last one that I was just showing you the picture from, it's just Painting Watercolor Basics. And it's basic. This book it's huge, it's gigantic, and it's like a class. The whole book is like an introductory class. The Watercolor is for Everyone book is, I think, my new favorite watercolor book, and it's about she gives lessons in it, and so there's I can't even remember how many lessons she has. 21 lessons, I believe, and each one involves a little bit of meditation and a little bit of music and mindfulness, and it's a beautiful book. So it's probably one that I'll purchase. But for this class, Everyday Watercolor did a great job. So here's another reason I wanted to show you their example of color testing. Most artists will do a color test sample before they get started. They just want to see what their paints, especially if you're not used to your paints, or if your colors have changed at all, or if you're using a new textured paper, any of those things. I think it's really worth taking one piece of your paper and doing a color test with it. So I'll just talk while you guys are going. And let me know if you want me to slow down or say anything again. When painting most things, I prefer to reference the real thing, the real subject. So if I can get a flower and bring it inside, I prefer that to taking a picture. But if I need to, I'll pull up a picture. I'm not one of those people who tries to do it from memory or visualize a flower in my head. I really think looking at something, and speaking of that, there's this quote that I really like by Frederick Frank from The Zen of Seeing. He said, "I've learned that what I have not drawn, I have never really seen." And when I started doing a nature drawing journal, I realized that pine trees, their branches go up, and we actually draw Christmas trees with their branches going down. And it's really interesting. I never noticed before that most pine trees, their branches, they go up. And so I felt like for the first time, I really saw that pine tree because I was drawing it and I was looking at it. And so I think if you can, if you'd like to paint a flower that's in your house or one that's in your yard, I think that's one of the best ways to do it if you can. And the key is to really look at your subject. I'm going to teach you a little bit about shapes. And there's really basic shapes that you learn as a child, or the shapes that we use for drawing and painting. Ovals, circles, squares, triangles, and stars. That's your basic shapes. And you want to look at shadows and color. Now, today we're not going to do anything fancy with shadowing or anything like that. We're going to do something super, super basic. I do have I did a really quick study of a daylily last week, and just very, very easy and simplified, but just getting you used to your colors. And then the other thing that we want to keep in mind is balance. So you want to avoid perfect symmetry when you're composing a piece and putting it out on paper. Creating movement by grouping objects in odd numbers is always good. Now, for this one, we're just drawing one flower. So I would recommend not placing it right in the center, which is why I placed my flower slightly to the left for everybody to see. When you're placing your subject in the center, it causes the eye to stop moving and just stay right there. When you place it up in the right-hand corner, your eye goes to the right-hand corner and then will create an S to go down, or vice versa. If you're bottom corner, it'll create a Z to go up. And that's one way just to keep your eye moving throughout the painting. And it's interesting, if you notice, you start looking at famous artwork, that rarely people put things directly in the center. You can try different angles and arrangements for your piece. Putting your main focal points off center, and like I said, snaking it like an S or a Z to help your eyes follow. Last, I'm just going to let you know about the two different types of watercolor painting. There's wet on wet technique, which is wet watercolor on wet paper. We're not going to do that today because that method it can be really tricky to perfect. It's too much water will dilute the colors, too little will give you hard edges. When you get the right amount of paint, though, the magic really happens and you're able to get diffused edges and soft starbursts, and it's beautiful. So I highly recommend the 4 books that I recommended are books that have wet on wet instructions in them too. And so I recommend trying that. It's just maybe not for our first class together. We would try wet on wet. Wet on dry is the other one, and that's wet paint on dry paper. And that technique is used to create layers. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a look at our flower, and we're going to create the first layer using the lightest color of the flower. And then we're going to add the next layer using the next darker. And we're just going to grow darker and darker until we've created our flower. And you can see in the daylily that there's red in the center, almost like a circle. We're going to start with our yellows, and then we're going to work our way to that red, and then possibly a little brown. So that's it for my notes on teaching, and I would love to get started. Does anyone need more time doing their test? I can't see everyone, but if anybody needs more time, please unmute and let me know. Okay, Miriam, go ahead. That's perfect, Michelle. That's really great. Yeah, and it's nice to see. It's like in mine right here, you can see where I tried it a little darker, and then I used more water, and that's lighter. And you can see the different areas. I tried different brushes. That's always important too, to try different brushes. With flowers, a round edged brush is something that you can use when you're doing straighter lines. That's when I use a square top brush like this. It's hard to see, but that's when I use a square top brush like this for straighter edges. I find that even just dabbing like this can create a nice line, even in watercolor. Whereas with my round brushes, it's more about the shape they make when they push down on the paper. So I get most of my art supplies at Michael's, or if it's something I really can't find, I get it at Amazon or Artists and Craftsmen in Portland, but they're so expensive. So I try not to go there as often. Yeah, so we're going to get started. As soon as everyone's done, we're going to try drawing. Oh, no, take your time, Miriam. We're going to try drawing. And if you're going to work on the daylily, I want you to really take a look at the daylily and see the shapes that are in it. The daylily is essentially a star shape. So think about a star while you're drawing it. Look at the circle that's in the center of it. My sketch is really light, so you're not going to be able to see it, but I'm going to outline it with pen as soon as we get started drawing. I'm going to start drawing mine with pen so you can see it unfold. I chose to do mine big and kind of off-centered. I'm not going to do a background today, just really focus on the color of the flower. So as soon as everyone's ready, I'll switch over to this viewing and we'll start drawing.
Sarah,
Yes.
so I wanted to do this Cosmo
Yeah.
and use, so this basic shape, that would be a circle shape, right? Not a star.
Yes, that would be a circle shape. And then you look at the ovals that each petal creates and the different lines and textures. Really, everything breaks down to shapes. And so it's pretty amazing if you really start to look at things. Sometimes when I find it tricky, like a certain petal, I find it tricky. I just need to really look, and maybe even trace the petal with my hand and my pen to see how I'm going to draw that.
Okay.
So we're really taking a good look. Is mostly everybody ready to start drawing? So we're going to use our pencil. You are welcome to outline this in a pen if you'd like. I'm going to outline in a pen so that you can see mine. But just drawing with a pencil is perfect.
But how do I, so the page that had the samples, I can't flip it because it's still wet.
Well, it depends on what you like to do. I do mostly tear my pages out of my watercolor
Okay.
notebooks because they're
Right.
all going to take different times to dry, and I usually do more than one study at a time. So I do take the pages out of my watercolor pads. I like to sketch with a loose and open hand. So I try not to stick to straight lines or anything that I'm worried about. And I use an eraser. I love using an eraser. Now the flower that I sketched last night that I'm drawing right now is not the exact flower that you saw, because that one died in my studio when it was 100 degrees this morning. So that's a freshly picked flower. So my drawing might look a little bit different. I know it looks magical that I just drew that upside down, but really there was pencil on it beforehand. So I didn't just sketch that flower upside down. And when I trace over with a pen, I like to just erase my pencil underneath. So that's what I'm going to do. And everybody, take your time drawing. And if you feel like you need to continue drawing, even when we dive into the painting, please continue drawing. I think it's really important that we take our time and we don't ever feel rushed with art. Just because we have a time limit on tonight's class doesn't mean that you can't continue afterwards well into the night. I find that with watercolor, it's the color that's going to make your painting fantastic. Your drawing is just a drawing. If you look at, they're absolutely amazing. Their drawings are simple and basic. They're just shapes that they put together to create something like a bird or a dog, but they really, they just are amazing when they use their color because children don't hold back. And so I think if we can really look at flowers tonight and try not to hold back with our colors and get really bold, even the simplest of a drawing will look really beautiful. How's it going, Jen? Are you doing a good job drawing too? You're muted. I can't see. I can't hear you. There you
It's terrible, Sarah, but you already knew that.
No, it's just shapes on a paper, you know?
You guys, I wasn't even allowed to tape stuff at Wyndham. Sarah had to do everything for me. I was pretty.
She's kidding about the taping. I mean, the tape.
It's not. I'm not kidding.
She wasn't allowed to do extreme taping, you know, like extremely taped jobs. But yes, I do enjoy the fact that I get to do some of the more artsy things at the library. Oh,
And
we actually.
she is magical. She says it. She made it look magical. Sarah is magical.
We actually have, one of our art shows is going to be my book faces coming up soon.
Oh, that's fun.
From August to October, my book faces will be hung up in the library, which will be really fun.
I don't know if our patrons know what book face is. I should put up one of the.
Yes.
I don't know. I want to know what it is.
Okay, so every week I take a book and I try and finish the cover with real life. So say, and I can't do it with every book, but say the book is half of someone's face, I'll try and line it up with a live person's face and finish and continue the book. And I wish I had one in my studio with me, but I don't have any in here.
Hold on.
If you feel like following the Wyndham Public Library on Instagram or Facebook, you'll be able to see them every Friday. It's called Book Face Friday. And it is really fun. I think I've done like 275 of them since I started working in libraries.
All right, 1 second. I'll share my screen and show them one.
Was it the one of you in the wedding dress?
It is not, although that is my favorite.
Me too.
I don't like having my picture taken, and we couldn't have wine at work, but Sarah talked me into it because I do love being in a wedding dress. So this is the idea of a book face.
Yep.
So she kind of has this is the book, the blue part, and then she sort of finishes it. But look how she lines it up. Like, no kidding, you guys. Like, she does like she is magic. She does that like in 2 seconds.
Some of them are easy, some of them are hard. Some of them aren't that easy. I do very much enjoy doing that though. And I'm so lucky that like my first week of work at the Wyndham Library, they were like, would you like to try this art thing? And I was like, yes, I would.
I just
And
want to
now-
say I'm an excellent boss. If I do say
She
so
really
myself.
is.
How would I find that one, Sarah? I bet I can go to the photos part of the, yeah, I'll find it. That is my favorite.
We did Pride and Prejudice, and she's wearing a beautiful gown on the cover of that book. And so Jen put on her wedding dress and she posed for me, and that was a really special one. That was really fun.
It was during the pandemic too, so we were closed.
Yeah, no
so
one was in the library with her wedding dress on.
that would have been equally fun.
Yep.
Nothing
Well,
to see here, people.
If anyone is done with their drawing and would like to start with painting, I am going to get started a little bit on mine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the lightest color I can. Now, looking at that sad daylily that's just sitting there on that screen, you don't see a lot of yellow, but underneath that orange is some yellow. And so that's what I'm going to start with, is a little bit of yellow. And on my test sheet, I noticed I have two yellows. I have this one here and this one here. And so I'm going to go with the more natural color yellow that I like it a little bit more. It feels like it's a little more for flowers. And I also love to mix. So I have palettes with me, but my most watercolor come with their own palettes. So you'll notice it's just like an empty plastic side. And I think the ones that I recommended for you folks, when you open them up, there's actually little divot circles, and that's your palette. So you can mix colors in there if you'd like, and play with that. So what I sometimes do is take a little bit of the yellow that I want, and I spread it out in here, and I add more water to it so that I can really get it light. And I just keep dipping into the water until I have it nice and light. And then I can kind of get started with my painting. And I start with a small brush and I just work really slowly outwards. I think strokes are important, and I think it's important not to keep dipping, but to let some parts be a little bit darker than other parts. It's okay to go out of the lines. It's okay to do anything. While I am just going to run, as you can see, my water's green. So if anybody's water gets to this color, you wouldn't want it to mix with your yellows. So I'm going to just run into my kitchen and change my water out very quickly, and I'll be right back.
You can also sit in on this watercolor class.
Does anybody have any questions at all on anything? Drawing? Would anybody like to show what they're working on? And if you'd like any advice, if you'd like any help? Yes.
I don't even know if you can see this because I sketched it pretty lightly. So you probably can't see it. This is my subject. right here,
Perfect.
a black-eyed Susan. The first one I did is about as big as a silver dollar.
Mhm.
And I decided it was too small. I must be afraid or something because my second one is.
That's
this
actually a
one.
perfect size for you to try your watercolor out on.
You think so?
I do. And then I think you can definitely work bigger than that too. I tend to fill my pages.
Yeah, nice.
But when I started art school, everybody worked small at the beginning. It's small is kind of, it's a lot easier, but then actually you try and paint it and your brushes aren't small enough to paint the tiny drawing that you did. So I
Right.
learned to spread out a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
It is
Okay.
hard though.
I guess I'll use my finest brush.
And you can
Also,
dilute your paints with water
yeah,
to get your lightest colors. So it doesn't take very long for this to dry. This one's already dry right here. So just so that I can show you, my next layer, I would probably work into the orange a little bit. And I would mix that with my yellow to kind of get that daylily color. And I might then try starting to get some darker colors into my daylily. And the yellow underneath just helps pull that orange forward. And any of the yellow highlights you've already created. So I noticed a lot of times on the edge of the flower, right along the edge of the flower is like yellow. And so I'm just going to kind of leave that edge open. You can also experiment slightly with when your paper is still wet and your paint is still wet, touching with a little bit of a wet brush and making what I called starbursts on the wet on wet painting. And starbursts kind of burst into, let's see if I can get something to show you. They kind of start to spread out a little bit. And when they dry, they create this really great texture. Anytime something runs, you can just dab it with a tissue. It's really easy. Just anytime something is too watery or doesn't look right, you can just dab it with a tissue. And I always say, although watercolor isn't the same, you can always paint over paint.
I'm gonna share my screen, so if people want to see that book face that we were talking about.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Right?
Oh, that is so
Can you guys see the
cool.
book? You can see Sarah's
Yeah.
hand on the left, and yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
And let
though?
me just tell you something. She did that, like she pulled that off in like minutes. Like she like dragged out a chair and an ottoman and was like, move your arm up over to the left. Like anyway, it was
That's
super quick.
fantastic.
And then I hung out in my wedding dress the rest of the day.
It was a fun day.
It was a fun day. Nothing weird here.
No, nothing strange at all. We just like to dress up a little bit.
Like when do you get to wear your wedding dress? Never.
Yeah, right.
So I'm actually working on two different flowers right now because I have one that I started last week when I was just playing. I've been playing with different flowers in the yard, and I chose the daylily because it's blooming right now. And honestly, my black-eyed Susans haven't even opened up. So I wanted it to be my black-eyed Susans, but they're all just about at that point where you can see their little black eye and their yellow is just, but it's just not there yet. Almost. The other amazing thing about watercolors is you're never wasting anything. So this palette that I'm creating here while I'm mixing these colors, these will all dry. And then tomorrow, if I come back to this painting and I want this color orange, I just have to dip my brush in the water and re-wet it right here on the plastic palette, and it will just come back to life. So it really is amazing. It's not the same on paper. You can't, recreate it on paper, but you can touch up areas on paper. So this painting is over a week old, and I'm just going to start like adding some light colors to the edges so that I can have some highlights. And it was just a really rough sketch of a daylily that died.
Speaking of sketches, my pencil sketch is showing through the petals on my flower that I'm painting.
So the pencil's showing through, and it does, that's why we want to do a light sketch. It does show through a little bit, and even in the books, you'll notice that pencil kind of, depending on the colors that you're using, the pencil will show through a little bit. It's sometimes depending on the painting, that's why I like to outline in pen, because I feel like that helps you get rid of those pencil marks and creates a bold line. But I also very much like this one, you folks might not be able to see it, but my pencil lines are still in there. So I mean, I can see them up close, but as I create more texture and depth, the pencil lines kind of just become part of the shadows and the veins of the flowers.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right now,
And
I'm not liking it.
once the painting's dry, you can go in with an eraser
Oh,
through the paint, and you can very gently erase. So I was able, this little nub that I have here, I'm very gently erasing some of my pencil lines, but that would be after at least a day of drying. You wouldn't want to mess up your painting.
yeah, right.
My brother is a writer, he's and an editor, he's not an artist. Everybody in my family does some kind of art, but my brother Joe is a writer, and he decided last year for his New Year's resolution that he was going to do one watercolor painting a day, and very simple watercolor paintings. So he has a tiny little pad and a little set like I have, and some of them are just color studies, like circles with green and blue. But he's continued to do it. This will be his second year, and he's still doing a watercolor study every day. And it's just a way to help him open his mind. And I try never to think that something isn't good enough to show people, or it isn't good enough for, you know, for teaching a class or thing. You know, I try and stay as positive as I possibly can when it comes to art. And even though some of his paintings look like a 3-year-old did them, I just absolutely adore them, because he's trying to paint, and that's not his natural talent, and he's just working on it. And I think 3-year-olds paint really beautifully. I'm interested to find out if anybody else enjoys mixing colors on their palettes. If you're using just straight colors, or if you're trying like a little bit of pink inside with your purple.
I'm using 2 shades, like a purpley pink and a pink and white.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, white really, I use a lot of white. It's funny because people are like, why would you have white for watercolors on white paper? But it's really to mix with the other colors and to get some different depths and different hues in there.
So if like the Cosmo has a yellowy orange center.
Yep.
So I finished doing the outside, but I don't know if you can see it.
I can see it. It looks beautiful. That's a perfect color.
So
Yeah,
can
that's
if
great,
it's
Mary.
dry enough to touch, is it dry enough to start adding the yellow center?
Yes, and watercolor does dry very fast, but you maybe take a little, like go slow with your yellow, and just in case it were to accidentally bleed, I would go slow with your yellow.
Sorry, I'll mute this.
No, you're fine. Go slow with the yellow and then have maybe a tissue there. So if it doesn't work out, you can just dab it right up just in case you need to. And it's all about experimenting, really.
When you were talking about children's art, I have this on my kitchen wall because
I love that.
I do too. It was done by my daughter, like in 4th grade or something. And I don't know if you can see the whole thing, but it's just her use of colors and the subject and the way the cows look.
I know children, actually, I have a piece on my wall too. I'll grab it.
Oh,
That my daughter did.
yeah.
Children, they go crazy with color. They love color.
Yeah.
So she did this elephant right here.
Oh,
And
look
she
at the
just
eyes. And
turned it
and
into a rainbow color and
the
dotted
whimsical.
background. I mean, it's just, to me, it's like, it's so amazing. And I absolutely, I don't think I would think to make a elephant rainbow, but she did.
No.
And that makes the difference.
I love it. That belongs on your wall.
Oh, yeah.
It belongs in a library,
It actually was. It was up. We had a children's art show. And so a lot of my daughter's work and my son's work was up there. And they both do
Wow.
very, very different work. My son is technical and he likes to draw like machines and robots. And my daughter is colorful and she likes to draw, and use a lot of color.
Yep.
And now they're grown, but
yeah.
But it is wonderful that they don't hesitate to use the color.
Yeah, I know. That's what makes their pictures so wonderful.
So I hope everybody is playing around a little bit with touching directly on your pans and seeing what kind of dark colors you can get, and then just lightly washing over. Really, I mean, all I'm doing right now, I'm not even looking at my flower. So I'm just kind of mixing colors and seeing what I can get on paper. But it really is amazing to see the different textures and the different things that you can do. When I do paint, I paint a brush stroke the way the flower is going or the way the tree is going. So if I notice that this petal right here is kind of falling down this way, that's the way that my brush is going to go. And that actually creates a really great 3-dimensional. So I kind of do my brush strokes depending, especially if I'm working in nature, depending on the way the leaf is growing or the way the flower, the petal is growing, the way that you see it. It's a little bit more difficult. Well, actually, I have a really hard time with birds, but I'm working on that one. But it's harder to paint birds.
Yes, I find them very difficult.
They're difficult to draw.
To draw even, that's why.
Yes,
I've tried, and it's just like, oh, it's all wrong.
I know. I struggle with it too, but I have a couple of good books on specifically drawing birds, and I try and do nature studies whenever I can. And I do find that helps, really, like looking at a bird.
Yes.
Seeing how it flies and seeing what its wings look like and its feathers look like. That really, you wouldn't think, I don't know. It just really helps when I want to draw a willow tree. It really helps if I'm sitting underneath a willow tree.
Absolutely. You have to draw and paint from life. I really believe that. I know it.
And if you can't, you take a picture or you pull up a picture, but it really helps if you can feel that leaf or you can see the bark and see what kind of, texture it's making.
Well, we were talking a little bit about magic before, but I think that's what happens when you draw or paint from real life. There's just something that from your eyes goes down your arm to your hands, and before you know it, you've got that person's face on the paper or, yeah,
It
It's
really is, it's amazing.
it's, yeah. I'm so glad you said that about, the brush strokes going in the direction that.
Yep, it
'Cause
really does help. And I know that there's different types of brushes for so many different things, but when it comes to watercolor, I love just using my one round tip pointy brush. When I paint with acrylics, I actually use a palette knife and my hands. I rarely use a brush for acrylic paints, but there's something about this shaped brush that I love. I can get into nooks and crannies, and I can kind of get a little bit of detail going on. If I want to darken up my green, I can really just, dab it around the edges. And then I can also spread it out and make a nice spreading brush stroke.
Sarah, I have a question. I want
Yeah.
to show you the flowers I'm doing. There are these vases.
Ooh,
Oh, those are so pretty.
yeah.
But the problem is I don't know how to get, so the middle one, I've done 2 layers,
Oh, yes.
but how do I add more? And then this guy, like the you're seeing the back side, so it's lighter, but the other side you are seeing, but I need to add more color. So what do I do?
So you're going to take a small brush, a real nice tiny brush, and
Okay.
you can use the sheet of paper that you created your palette, your color study on,
Yep.
just to test out. And like I was testing out my yellow over here, just kind of playing with what it looked like if I used a tiny brush and I did it with not very much water. So play around maybe with your paint being wet, but not adding too much water to your brush, and see if you can get some of that detail in there. And I'll see if I can. So I'm just going
All
right
these
into,
little lines, like darker.
yes. Yes,
Like,
so
okay,
I'm
so
going,
look
I'm
in the
gonna go
middle.
right in with my orange right here, and I'm gonna just start adding like a stripe. Now, if that stripe is too dark, there's so many different things you can do. You can dab it down with your finger to create a texture, but you can also add some water and create some 3-dimensional works that way. And so when it's dry, when your painting's finally dry, you can kind of go in with some darker colors, and we're working from light to dark. So that's exactly what you want to do. You want to look to see where the dark colors are, look to see what shape the dark colors make, and then try and put them in that spot using less water and more paint.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, and the color is beautiful.
Thank you.
When is my flower gonna stop looking like a cartoon?
I think mine looks like a cartoon too.
No, doesn't. The petals are bent and curled, and you can tell that.
So that is one of those things that took me a very, very long time to learn how to do. And it's why I started this whole lesson off with that quote about drawing what you like, not really seeing something until you've drawn it. It took me a long time to get to see these bends and how to make a line, make it look 3-dimensional on paper when it's just a flat piece of paper. You're basically just making something look 3D when it's only 2D.
Right.
So I really take a look at the lines and the shadows, and sometimes a shadow, and I don't mean a shadow on the background, I mean a shadow on the flower. Sometimes one of those showers is a line that you need to put into your painting.
That's what I'm doing right now. And yeah.
So I'm giving you folks the basic tips on how to get started, and just some general ideas on what I've found has worked for me. And then I really feel like with that and the books I recommended, you'll be able to just start painting and practicing more. And I think with it being summer, flowers are a great they're great. You can just pick one and you can put it right in front of you and you can just give it a whirl. I also highly recommend the ocean because it gets you playing with the blues, which can be tricky playing with your blues and greens, but the ocean is really fun to paint too.
Mm.
And then there's some tricks that you can try, like adding salt to wet watercolor paint. The salt will suck up the watercolor and leave back like a light starburst. So if you're trying for just some fun texture, you can sprinkle a little bit of salt right where your paint is wet, and then it will kind of suck it up. And when your whole painting's dry, you just brush the salt right off. That's a fun one to play around with because it's easy. Everybody has salt at their house.
That
Can
is
you
nice.
try like large coarse kosher salt as opposed to fine table salt?
I
And
find the larger, coarser the salt, the better it works, but you can use small table salt. It does that will work as well. You'll just probably need a little bit more. But the larger the salt, the less you need, and you can kind of spread it out a little bit and get these really amazing bursts throughout your painting. I do that when I'm painting the ocean or a night sky. I like to add a little piece of salt here and there because it takes away from that perfect brush stroke and makes like just this little imperfection that you would see when you look at nature, because nature's not perfect. Has anyone found any colors that are tricky to work with that you in your palettes, or has everything really kind of worked out just the way you wanted it to, or hopefully similar to what you want it to look like? If you need help mixing by any means, please just ask. That's one of my favorite things to do. If you want a purple to be more purple, or if you're trying to make mauve, and I actually just play around with it. That's why I find it so I can do it really well, because I really mix and just keep mixing and mixing and mixing. I'll end up with like 4 of these palettes full of mixed colors that I'll end up using for months afterwards.
So what if one of your petals you really don't like?
So is it?
So,
Oh, that's beautiful.
really
I
good,
like this
Michelle.
guy. I don't like this guy.
Okay, it's
Oh.
funny because
Oh.
in all of my paintings, it's this guy that I'm not a huge fan of, and I feel like that
Oh,
might be the
yeah.
same one in yours. And I think it might just be the angle in which it was at. It wasn't the most perfect angle. And
'Cause
instead
it
of,
had like the folds of
it did, it had folds on either side, so that it just did this,
yeah.
kind
So
of-
like my folds
are
just
darker. Yep. And that's what they should be. They should be darker. And then take a peek and see where there's other dark parts just like that in the flower. And that's what's going to move you from that petal to the whole flower, is by not having just that one color in that one area. Try and find other areas of that flower where that color might be. Like in the center area where there's kind of some shadowing. And then that's what's going to pull your flower together.
Okay. I'm gonna walk away for a second, and maybe when I'll have a
Yes.
new vision.
Yes, I love walking away from artwork. That's a perfect thing to do. Does anybody else want to show theirs off? I'm really interested.
Well, I'll show mine, but it's terrible.
Oh, that's
Oh,
wonderful.
It has a smiley face, Jen.
It's so like I do not have an eye for this, but it's
No, I
fun.
like it.
I'm having
I
fun.
like
And your color is on point too. That's a daylily
is.
color.
Yeah, it is. It looks good.
Oh, you guys, this is not
ready
my
for-
thing.
Everybody ready for my cartoon? I'm not done.
Oh,
I like that.
beautiful.
That's so
Okay.
happy looking.
I
Oh,
know.
it really is.
I've got to do more. I mean, it's I've got an idea right now how I'm gonna touch it up and try to improve it. So
I was
it's-
just, a friend of mine was saying that she would like, so the most realistic flowers are not necessarily the ones that you would see. You know, if you go to an art show or an arts and crafts show and someone has like tea towels that have flowers on them. Those are flowers that it's the shape and the color that really makes them beautiful. I was working on this flower the other day and it was just the
Ooh.
most simple
Ooh, that's
shape.
pretty.
And it
That's
was just two colors, one really watered down and one a little bit darker. And I had so much fun that I think I'm going to try and put it on a tea towel if I can.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's about the realistic. It's really about the color that you can get and how you can make the color pop in some areas and give you some definition. I have to let my dog out, so I'm gonna step away for 2 seconds.
Augie.
All right, I'm back.
Sarah,
Yes.
I'm just having a little trouble. This is
Oh.
Heather. I'm having a
Heather,
little
it looks beautiful.
thank you. Where
Wow.
the flower joins the stem, it
Mhm.
just looks flat and I want it to look more three-dimensional. So how do
Okay.
I get that shape?
Well, would anybody mind if I actually picked up the flower now? Has everyone that's drawing the daylily had time enough to look at it so that I can pick it up and show some things? Is that, if anybody opposes, just turn your mic off and let me know. Otherwise, I'm gonna go grab it.
I'm using my own daylily for this. So
Perfect. So,
Yeah.
So actually, if you notice, my daylily's closing because it's nighttime. And so it has decided that there isn't enough sunlight to do that. So what I like to do is I like to really take a close-up look at what am I looking at where the flower meets the stem. And so I know that there's a darker green down here and that that definitely gets lighter. And then it looks like it starts to mix and a little bit of green goes into that part of the flower. Now we can see that right now because the flower is closed, but you can even see that in your painting. And you might want to add some green to your orange and then some orange to your green. And give it a try. Really take a peek and look to see if is it stripes? I mean, I noticed stripes on mine. I notice it looks like a shadow. There's some darker green coming right into this orange right here. Try doing that. And then if you really need to, I would then maybe add like a small black pen just to give yourself a tiny bit of detail if you're looking for a little bit more detail.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So we have about 20 minutes left of the class. And so any questions that anybody might have, I would love for you to ask them. And if you have questions about other things or even books about watercolor, I'm happy to answer those questions as well. Even if you'd like to know more about my dog, I would be happy to answer more questions about my, I'm just kidding. He's needy, but he keeps me going.
He's the best.
Jen, where's your dog?
Oh God, Floyd is daddy's little girl. She's in the other room with my husband.
Okay.
She did come to visit me at work yesterday, though.
Oh, I love when she comes to visit you at work.
I know. Steve told her Auntie Sarah was going to be on Zoom tonight, and
Mm.
she hasn't seen Auntie. She has all her aunties, all her work aunties.
Mm-hmm. Our dogs are spoiled.
So spoiled. Has Augie gotten used to your new schedule?
Yeah, he's not too, and the kids are home during the summer. So I used to
Okay.
work afternoons at the library, but now I'm doing mornings, which is great for the school year. My kids are home alone during the summer vacation, but they get to be with Augie. So he learned how to open the door by himself. So when I pull into the driveway, he runs and he jumps up and hits the handle, opens the door, runs out and greets me right at my car door.
You heard that, Courtney?
I was on a Zoom call yesterday with somebody whose cat learned how to open doors.
Yeah.
Good
I mean, there's really nothing I can do. I try locking it, but it doesn't work.
I love that. I wish our dog could do that.
I had a lab. I had a lab beforehand and I didn't understand small dog love until we got Augie. Small dogs are so, our lab was loyal and gentle and kind and so amazing. And Augie, he's not very gentle. Sometimes he's annoying, but he loves stronger than any animal has ever loved me. He just loves me so much that it's wonderful when your kids get older to have a dog that really likes you.
That's right.
I'll probably add layers to my painting off and on for the next week. When things dry, they look a little bit different. When I step away and come back to it, I notice something that I'd like to change about it. I'm constantly working and reworking watercolor because you can. It's not the same as acrylic.
Yeah, I can see that's what I'm going to do with this. Definitely.
And I think it's important too to make notes with the techniques that you use when you're getting started. So if you tried a certain brush or a certain brush stroke or a certain color, just making a little bit of a note attached to that so that you can learn from what you've been doing. And then unless you're an everyday painter like my brother who never forgets anything now. But for me, I keep a notebook.
And if folks like this class and would like to do something like this again, please let me know. Or if you have other ideas for these kinds of things, I'm definitely open to it. So just send me an email or drop it in the chat or give me a call or stop by, whatever, you know where to find me.
I would do this again.
Awesome.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, definitely.
Jen,
There's a
I
lot
would
of
love
different
more.
things I can teach too. So if there's certain things that you've always wanted to learn how to do, you can let Jen know. And I'm more than happy to see if it's something I'm able to teach you how to do.
Cool.
Sarah can do everything. Like,
Well,
literally
being a fine arts majors, I had to do absolutely everything. The only thing I can't teach you is clay. That's the only thing that just didn't stick with my brain when I was in art school.
Well,
You mean like pottery?
pottery on a wheel. That's the
Yeah.
only thing. And I love doing it. And I have friends who are potters and they let me use their wheel, but I'm just
Oh.
terrible at it. Absolutely
Really?
terrible.
I
What-
doubt it.
what-
I
what-
bet she's not.
How do you define terrible? What is
Right.
this? What
Well,
are
I
you- what
can't
are
I
you trying to
can't
say?
create anything that I want, that I envision. And so if I can at least come close to creating something that I envision, then I feel like I have an okay skill in that area, but I can't, it's just like this wet thing that falls around and gets more on my pants than it does stay on the pottery wheel.
Oh,
So it's not like that scene in Ghost.
And it's not like that at all. That is not an easy thing to do. Demi Moore probably practiced for years for that one.
I think that was a stunt double.
It was.
Yeah, okay.
yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, well, we're not gonna do anything with sharp tools because I don't want to hear like somebody was trying to make you, what's that where you like carve the, I
Oh.
took it, yeah, right? Is it
Yeah.
like printmaking where you like have like a soft clay and you carve? We're not doing
Yeah,
that.
you get the linoleum and then and they have those sharp diggers. But there are, if anybody's interested in that type of printmaking, oh, look at Galen's dog.
Oh, what kind of dog?
This is
Oh.
Bella. She's the Charlotte Hobbs library dog. Because
Oh.
she's
Oh,
Courtney's
that's
dog.
Bella. Bella, you get a cookie when you come and a cookie when you go.
Yeah, I've heard how she just makes a beeline for you ladies at the desk in the offices.
It's possible she's learned where the cookies are. It's
I'm sure she's smart as a whip. Dogs always know where the cookies are.
Bye, Bella.
She's had enough. She's not a lap dog. Actually, she's just a little too big.
She's
heavy.
she's a great dog. She's so funny. She comes in with Courtney to shelve books, and she'll like when she's had it, she starts to cry, and she makes this like really like she is like no joke. She is done. Dog.
She's a little drama queen.
She is,
You know.
right? She is. She totally is.
And barking is below her. No, she sings or whines or groans, or she's got quite a range.
Yeah.
Quite a range. Right up there with Mariah Carey, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She could go anywhere with her voice.
Yeah. I have never met a dog I didn't like, so
Me
I
too.
haven't either.
yeah.
I'm the same. Even the ones that have bitten me.
Mhm.
Aw,
Been bitten plenty of times. I don't care. I get over it.
So for other art classes too, if there's something that you are interested in, like printmaking, I actually have some great alternatives where we don't have to use really hard, scratchy tools and linoleum. We can use a foam core board and just a ballpoint pen and some ink. So there's so many. Just if you ever have ideas, come up with them and share them with Jen. She can share them with me, and I'm happy to see if there's a way that we can work that into creating. I come up with a new art craft every month for our library in Wyndham, and some of them are really simple. We did like a rag quilt wreath this month where I just took old fabric and we tied it onto hoops and we made a wreath. We've done pressed flower bookmarks on mulberry paper. We've used watercolor pencils on postcards to make postcards to send out to folks during the winter holidays. Watercolor pencils those are something that you might be interested in trying too. Basically it's a colored pencil that you color with, and then when you're ready, you add a wet brush to what you just drew and it spreads it out. So it really is an amazing way. And I thought it would be the best way for my patrons to start dabbling in watercolor, because a lot of folks They don't mind coloring, especially with colored pencils. And so it's just like coloring with colored pencils, except that you can add that water component and it makes the color spread and it makes it darker and more vivid. And it really is amazing. And they're inexpensive.
Where do you get them?
Well, like I say, you can always get things on Amazon, but Michael's will have that one, and possibly Joann's Fabrics will have that one too. Michael's, as an artist, I like to, anything that I can get with a coupon, I really enjoy. So
Well, I don't shop on Amazon. I have this thing, but I bought this whole
Thank you.
like palette thing. And I think these are watercolor pencils when you say so, Sarah. Is that
yeah,
what
they
that is?
probably are if it's a paint set.
Yeah. And this was at Joann's and it was $10.
Oh,
So
Is that, show that again, please, Jen?
yeah, these are the two paints Sarah was talking about. And then these, I guess these are palette paints.
Yeah.
And it has 4 brushes and it has like the little like thingamajig. That's the official term. And
Right.
yeah,
That's a
it
lot.
came with- I know, $10. This was
Yeah,
$10.
and so
Great.
those are watercolor pencils? Are those watercolor pencils there?
I think so.
She thinks they are, and they probably will say something on the side. You'll
Okay,
definitely get it on
hold
the
on.
packaging.
Well, I threw the packaging away, so stop it.
Yeah.
It's it says Art Smith lemon yellow, but it doesn't say, but they must be. Why else would they be in here? I made a little
Wow.
mark with it on the page and put water on it, so it probably is because it's spread.
Oh, if it's spread, then it definitely is. Yeah, because a colored pencil wouldn't spread.
Okay.
And when it comes to art supplies too, I don't buy the most expensive art supplies. I buy probably the least expensive art supplies. And I'm not going to buy tempera paint by any means, but when I do paint acrylics on canvas or on a wooden palette, I just buy that folk art paint that you used to be able to get at AC Moore that was like 89 cents a bottle. And I would
Oh,
buy as
yeah.
many colors as I wanted. And it really does. I've done giant paintings and I've done tiny paintings using the same paint, and it really does work. Paint is paint to me. Some of it's more opaque than others, but especially watercolors. This is Winsor Newton, this little case that I have, and I bought it because it comes with a tiny little brush that fits right in there, and I really like the palette size. And I was looking for really natural colors. I wanted something that just had colors from nature. So this one, when I was at the store, opened up to the best colors for me so that I could go outside in the woods and paint. And I like that, but it's also, I mean, this one is inexpensive. This was, I think, $4.99, and it packs up really interesting where they all twist on top of each other. And this has excellent color. You can get the same kind of color on the paper. It's just a different brand. So I find you can play with it. Crayola, however, might have a little more plastic in it than others, but even Crayola, we're doing that at the library with the kids right now. And even the Crayola watercolors they're just amazing what kids can get from those. If your watercolors get dirty, there's a couple things you can do. You can individually take like a face cloth and wet it and just dab it over your pan, and that should clean it up. Like this yellow right here that I have has a bit of green on it, so it's turned a little bit green. And then with your palettes, all you have to do is run them under hot water, and all of that will come off even after it's dry. Just be careful. You don't want to get your paints too wet and have them soak, because believe it or not, they start to turn to mush if they're too wet. So I only add as much water as I need and then add a little bit more if it's necessary.
Sarah, and if people wanted to do like another watercolor class, because now we've, bought all our fancy paints.
Oh yeah.
There's other stuff you could teach, I'm sure.
This one, I'll move my paints over. This one book that I got, I'm really interested in maybe trying some of the techniques that are in this one. This one is the Creative Watercolor and Mixed Media. And it just has some really interesting projects in it where you use, you can use the, like a watercolor resist. There's something where we can use crayons and we can color first on paper. And then when you watercolor, because crayons are wax, the watercolor doesn't stick to that. And you can create these amazing paintings using a just crayon, like a white crayon on white paper. There's some other really amazing, I love this one with lightning.
That's cool. I really like that.
Just some techniques, like this person's just working on circles and making circles of different, and I think that would be something that would be really fun. It wouldn't be a nature study. It would be more, what colors inspire you? What colors would you like to mix together? You know, what kind of patterns do you like, and trying it all on your own.
Yeah, Michelle said, let's do more watercolor and explore these. So I think that'd be great. Yeah. So let's chat, Sarah.
That sounds good.
But everybody, please do feel free to reach out to me if you have specific ideas. But this is really, I am no artist, but this was really fun.
I think everybody did a great job. And I'm sure everybody that I didn't get to see did a great job too, because it's like trying is, oh, see, you pulled more of your color in there, and wow, it really
I like
burst.
that.
I know.
Oh, that's really
Yeah.
good.
Everybody
add more contrast.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody's painting should be different, and it should express themselves a little bit.
I like that you said you keep coming back to it for days or weeks and changing.
I
it.
do.
So I was trying to get the
Like
Oh,
that.
Heather,
Wow.
that's
the
pretty.
cosmos stem and the little tiny sort of almost
Yes.
delicate leaves. That's
Yep.
hard to do.
Yeah.
I know that is hard to do. It really is. And you can play with your brushes too. Take a piece of paper and try all the different brushes that you have.
Mhm.
Try different strokes. Try pushing down harder on a brush. Try doing something light. It's really about experimenting, and watercolor paper is expensive. So you can try and experiment on regular paper, but the more water you use, the harder it's going to be to experiment on like a regular printing paper. I like to just cut mine up and do all my, and so like this.
Oh, look at
Oh, that's
Shelley's.
beautiful.
Really pretty. That looks like
that
a
looks
tea
like
towel.
something. Yeah, that's like a
Yeah.
card or that's really neat.
That is beautiful.
Wow.
Love it.
Holy moly.
I know. See, I
You
like to
guys
cut,
are all so talented.
I would end up cutting it up and turning it into a greeting card, because anything. And so, yes, so I work like I didn't like this one, but I do like this one. So I'm just going to use the paper around this to keep testing. And I'll probably cut this one out to do a print with, but I utilize every last inch of paper that I have so that I can experiment a little bit with it.
Sarah,
Yeah.
which book did you say was like a whole course?
Oh, so that is the Watercolor for Everyone.
Watercolor is for everyone. Okay.
And she is, I believe she's Japanese. I haven't gotten into her author bio yet, but she does these really amazing lessons, and she talks about why it's important to show up every day and give it a try, even if you're not feeling artistic that day, why it's important to just like play with your color and do, and it's really like it's almost like a self-help book and learning how to watercolor book at the same time. And I think it's a great challenge to try and
Is that the
watercolor.
one that you were talking about has like a little bit of meditation
Yes.
or? Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep,
Cool.
that's the one that has a little bit of meditation, and really her work is beautiful. She does these, this is my next piece that I want to try and work on. She does these circles where she just
Oh.
creates these beautiful circles, and she's turned them into prints, and all different circles, all different sizes,
Oh.
all different colors. And she really just played with the water and the color. And I think that's the next thing that I've been painting flowers for the last month since this class was,
Mhm.
coming up. So now I think I'm going to just try something new and maybe work with circles. And watercolor isn't really something that I even think that I'm very like especially good at. It's not like my most amazing thing that I can do, but I really enjoy doing it. So if you enjoy doing it, I think it's worth doing.
Yeah.
We should now wait and see what Sarah's like really good at, because this is pretty good.
Yeah, I know it. I know.
There's things that you're confident with, and then there's things that you're not. And I'll tell you, acrylic paint I'm more confident with acrylic paint than I am with watercolor paint. Watercolor, I feel like I learn something new every time I sit down to do it, that something new pops up. And with acrylic, I just worked all through college with acrylic. So I feel like I kind of have a lot of that down, and I paint really abstract kind of things. So I work a lot with color in my hands.
I have
Well,
a
thank
question.
you very, very much. I have to go, but thank
Oh,
you.
you're welcome, Michelle. Great job.
We have one more question, and then we'll.
Yes, it was about the tubes of acrylic paint that you can get. And I was reading the back of them while I was shopping for watercolors. I came up with these kid things, and anyway, because it was a last minute thing. But anyway, it was saying how you could mix the acrylic paint with water. So I thought, well, how is that different from a watercolor? Why couldn't I just get, a nice big $2.50 tube of acrylic paint and have all kinds of it and squeeze some out on a palette? And
You
mix it
can
with-
definitely do that. Acrylic has more plastic in it.
Uh-huh.
So if you have 1 second, acrylic is like meant for
Wow.
creating like a bold and textured painting, whereas watercolor is meant to be absorbed. So like when you feel this painting, you can feel the paint and the plastic. Watercolor has more, it's almost like food coloring. So watercolor has more of a concentrated color to it. So you really can experiment with everything. And then there's gouache, which might be a little bit cheaper than watercolor, and is also, it's kind of an in-between acrylic and watercolor. Gouache kind of lays right in between that, and it spreads out really nice and fine, like watercolor does, but you can also, it's a little bit thicker like acrylic is.
That's interesting. I've seen that expression, in art books or in museums, wash, that, and I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah, I mean, and it really, like I told you about Helen Frankenthaler, she's just one of my favorite female artists because she chose, gesso is the white paint that makes the canvas white when you buy a canvas at a store. And she chose not to paint her canvas. So it was basically just a piece of fabric stretched on a frame. And because of that, her acrylic paints or her oil paints they bled right into the fabric. And if you look her up, you'll see her paintings are just absolutely amazing.
But why do you have to buy gesso? When I was taking art, he had us build our own canvases.
Yep, I did too.
And then spread, buy muslin and staple or nail it around. And then we just use like white house paint to, just make it dry and make it white.
And you can just use white. I mean, that's essentially what gesso is just, I think for when I was in art school, gesso was a little bit thicker and less, it was a little bit thicker. So it was just one coat and go. We never had to do 2 coats, and it kind of kept our classes, a little bit more streamlined.
Yeah.
But honestly, I use whatever I can. If we have leftover paint from painting our kitchen cabinets, I'm going to use that in the painting. It doesn't matter if it's
Yeah.
house paint or not. I'm gonna use
Yeah.
that leftover paint.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. That's good.
Thank you, Sarah. This was so much
Oh.
fun. Let's chat and we'll figure out something else. This is a huge success. Thank you so
Sounds
much.
perfect. Thank you
I'm not
guys.
surprised.
Thank
Sarah's
you very
excellent.
much.
It was nice to meet everybody.
Nice
Good
to meet
night.
you too. Thank you. Thanks for setting it up, Jen.
Oh, it was my absolute
Thank you.
pleasure.
It was fun.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Enjoy